Child abuse isn't something we typically like to talk about, but I think we can all agree it needs to stop. Joining us today is Kristine Cassie. She is the CEO of Chinook Sexual Assault Center in Lethbridge. Kristine, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. First off, can you maybe give us a brief overview of what the Chinook Sexual Assault Center does?
Well, the Chinook Sexual Assault Center has two main programs. One is the Sexual Assault Center, which provides a range of services from crisis intervention to therapy, including peer support groups, what we call system navigation. So sometimes people's lives just aren't going as well as what they'd hope they'd be because they're dealing with the impacts of the trauma that they're experiencing. So we'll help negotiate their way through certain systems that they want to deal with. We also provide specialized police and court support as well. So for those people who do want to go forward to report to police, because there's no statute of limitations in Canada, we will support them through that process all the way through to the court process with that as well. Beyond that, we also have our signature program, the Child and Youth Advocacy Center, which is also called Chinook. Can never use that name enough, it seems. Chinook Child and Youth Advocacy Center deals with children 0 to 17 years of age that have been identified through children's services or through policing services throughout southwestern Alberta that have been abused and either sexually abused, severe physical abuse, or severe neglect, or have been exposed to domestic violence. And so we actually broker the child forensic interviews to be done in a child-friendly, culturally sensitive a space that we host, as well as then supporting the non-offending family members and the child throughout the court process and how they learn to heal through therapy and other resources that we have here.
Well, pretty heavy stuff that you're dealing with over there, Kristine, for sure. Like I said earlier, child abuse, of course, isn't a topic we love to talk about, but you believe that it is, in fact, important to have those conversations about the issue.
Absolutely. What we know from the stats, both from a prevalence study that was done through the Alberta Association of Sexual Assault Services and stats that we get through policing agencies and child welfare agencies across Canada, is that it impacts about 1 in 3 kids. And so we look at a 34% prevalence rate really for child sexual abuse alone. In the city of Lethbridge, that would mean about 6,800 kids that may be impacted by some form of sexual abuse or some sort of sexual violation. So these are really staggering numbers that we're dealing with. We also know that this is one of the leading issues that leads to when the trauma hasn't been resolved, that leads to sexual assault later in life. So there's a direct connection of what's going on here. We also know those that have had that exposure to domestic violence, they're seeing that violence in their home, that they're living this out day after day, that this also leads to other behaviors and things that absolutely impact then how they respond to others as they grow into adult life and how they receive others. So what those healthy relationships may look like. And so our ability to be able to identify, to address, to intervene, we need to do, because if we don't deal with that trauma early, we know that we're setting up for a lifelong struggle.
Yeah. October, of course, is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. So, what is the Chinook Sexual Assault Center doing locally this month?
Well, beyond, putting out information, which we like to put out there, and doing some, presentations in schools and with other professionals, we have a 50-50 going on, so people can actually win some cash. But the money that's garnered from that actually helps to support our therapeutic resources at the Chinook Child and Youth Advocacy Center. We also are working with Gina Davis at Galaxy Bowling. She's a great friend and a champion of this issue, and so she's actually hosting a Galaxy Bowling, I guess, party that people can buy tickets for, bring in a team. There's a silent auction with it, and again, proceeds are going towards the Child and Youth Advocacy Center. With that, we're also doing, of course, the Go Blue Alberta. On October 24th is Go Blue Alberta. So wear blue, have your pictures taken. The city of Lethbridge will have City Hall lit up in blue, so that, again, just to call attention to what that issue is. Beyond that, we're available for people if they want information about child abuse and how maybe they need to report and are scared to report on something, that we can help walk them through what some of those reporting mechanisms would be for them.
Right. That's a way to kind of turn a really dark topic into kind of some light there to sort of earn, raise some money for it. So, like getting back to the issue, what are some of the signs that a child may be experiencing abuse? What should we be looking for?
If you're an outsider looking in, sometimes what you may see is certainly if it's physical abuse, you might see some bruising that really can't be explained on what that is. You might see some withdrawal behaviors are happening where they're not part of their regular or normal activities. You may see disassociation when they're in a school setting where they aren't able to focus. That could be for anything from physical abuse to domestic violence or sexual violence that's happening in the home. But you're going to see these changes in behaviors that are happening that way. For kids that are neglected, you may see that they don't have the proper clothing, they don't have the proper food to eat, things like this. You might see them losing a lot of weight, whatever that might be, and just in a state of neglect in that way. For others, you're seeing them as lost and not really doing so well because they aren't necessarily having those emotional connections where they need them. For any of us looking in, it's important to ask some questions about what's going on. Do you need anything? What might I be able to help with? Asking about how that. What's going on, and certainly we see teachers are great for this in being able to recognize things. Schools are a big factor in a child's life, and they help to identify when these types of things are going on. Family members too sometimes get really concerned and will make those calls, those very difficult calls to make. uh, but we know when you make that call, if we can get in, an assessment can be done, we can intervene early. And it doesn't mean that the family is going to be necessarily torn apart. It may mean that they're getting the resources they need to be able to work through some very difficult times, to learn some different behaviors. Some of us grew up in a time where spanking was, pretty much, that was the only parenting style. And although some of us, we may joke about it now, it's really not acceptable anymore to do that. There's other ways that we can parent and discipline our kids, and how we can put healthy boundaries in place to help people, progress. Beyond that is looking at who's having access to our kids and how do we identify when our child might be being groomed. How to identify when our family is being befriended because someone wants to have access to our children in that way. And so knowing some of those signs and what to look for is really important. And again, just knowing that, people are a call away and they really do want to help with that. And that both is through the Sexual Assault Center, the Child and Youth Advocacy Center, and a number of other resources that we have in the city of Lethbridge.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned a lot of things there. And of course, it can manifest itself in a
Mm.
number of different ways. Like you were mentioning neglect. I mean, it doesn't just come in the form of physical abuse. So, what are some of the main types of child abuse?
Really, we see the predominant thing that we see is actually sexual abuse, um, which is, probably the scariest of them all. If you talk to people, this is what they shy away from talking the most about, is that this can happen to those that are under the age of 18, and it happens to people of all ages. And it's, people do prey on the vulnerable, and the more vulnerable we are, and children certainly meet that criteria of being vulnerable. There is there are predators that are looking for that. So for us to be able to break that cycle, I'm sorry, to answer your question. So sexual abuse is the main one we're seeing. We're also seeing physical abuse. We're seeing a lot of exposure to domestic violence in this area, emotional neglect and neglect. So those are the five primary areas that we're seeing. And again, we deal mostly with the sexual abuse, the severe physical abuse, and the neglect.
Yeah, you were mentioning before some stats there. I'm just curious, how prevalent is it in our society? Did you say 6,800 cases locally in the
Well,
region?
I said that's what the 34% would work out to when we look at the population of children in the city of Lethbridge. So it is a 34% prevalence rate for sexual abuse itself, let alone for other forms of abuse. But it is like, almost, one in three children that are experiencing some form of abuse in our society. So it is quite high when we're looking at this. And again, we see the same thing when we look at adults when it comes to sexual assault. It is quite high. And so there's lots of ways that we can intervene and that we need to intervene and really see this and have these fruitful conversations so that people can take the topic seriously and to make those reports, even when they're feeling, I don't want to get involved. We know we all don't want our neighbors to be mad at us or to have that, awful situation, but we always have to put those children first.
Yeah, we kind of have a role as individuals in society to help. Almost like it takes a village to raise a child. It's kind of true in that case, isn't it?
It's absolutely true. I mean, first, it is legislated that we are supposed to doing that. There is, fines that you can receive if you fail to, if you knowingly neglect reporting child abuse that's happening. They rarely take issue with that, but I think morally we have that obligation. Very much like you said, it is a village that raises a child, and we have to be looking out for each other in this society if we really want to make those changes.
Right. Christine, about a year ago or so, the Chinook Sexual Assault Center opened a new facility for the Chinook Child and Youth Advocacy Center. So maybe tell us about some of the features of this new facility and why it's important.
Uh, Fantastic. Yes, so this is actually based on 40 years of evidence-based research. It actually originated out of Alabama, and is widely used throughout the world, but predominantly in North America. So we're one of, I want to say, 8 child and youth advocacy centers in the province. Uh, what a child and youth advocacy center does is that it actually brings all those very messy pieces from police reporting or children's services, the medical exams, the need for psychologists, the school system, all together so that we can actually look at a case of child abuse. We call them triaging child abuse and seeing what those needs are. We can actually walk them through prepare them for a child forensic interview. So there's a process for that. And then actually work on those pathways to treatment and to healing for the child and the family. So the work isn't done independent of the family, it's done with the family, with the child for it to be most successful, and then to see them successfully through the court case. Where the child interview becomes really critical is that quite often children had to tell their story not one time, but several times. So they may be telling it to the doctor, they may be telling it to the police, they may be telling it to children's services. And every time that they're having to tell their story, they're being re-traumatized in that abuse that they've suffered. So having a really well-constructed child forensic interview is paramount to the success of the court case. And so at the end of the day, hopefully you have more people that are able to be convicted of these crimes, which again helps to mitigate those risks to other children. So part of that is we'll identify one interviewer for that child, and if let's say if it's police doing the interview, children's services would sit in a monitoring room and be able to get their notes at exactly the same time of what this is. When the tape is really well done, that tape then can be submitted to court as evidence. The child doesn't have to go into court to state what the abuse was. They still have to be cross-examined, but they don't have to state again what they went through. So again, you limit the number of times the child has to speak directly to the type of abuse that they endured.
Right. That's amazing. And that's the case with any victim that has to go through this again and again. Is there any thoughts on that happening for anybody that's been through a horrific situation?
Absolutely. Well, even, there's always a misnomer when people think that they have to come to a sexual assault center, they have to tell us all the details of the sexual assault, and you don't. We aren't secondary witnesses to the crime. We know it's horrible. We believe you, and we just want to know how you're doing and how you need to get to that next step of where you want to be. So that's what we're here for. And so I think there is, police are much more trauma informed than what they were before on this, and so this is why this model is widely adopted throughout North America. Is we want to do better by the kids, and we know if we can do better with the children, we're going to do better with the adults in time. That we're actually going to circumvent children growing up to being abused yet again and again, or the possibility that other harm is going to be done to other people. And so these are those ways to actually mitigate those types of risks in our society and to help people really thrive because everyone needs that fair shot to make it through life and to be contributing citizens. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
What about the work that you're doing to prevent abuse from happening? Are you working kind of with the parents that have sort of been
Yeah.
doing this, or is it more of a let's get in front of the issue before it even gets there?
I guess there's 2 different ways that we
Yeah.
work with things. When it comes to the Child and Youth Advocacy Center, the work is done with the non-offending parent and the family members that are connected with that child for that support. And again, how they're attaching with that child, how they're supporting that child, if there's other children who've been abused in the home as well, and how they're going to, I guess, reconstruct their lives after this, and how to move forward with that and what those child needs are. And so that's that therapy process. So both through some connect parenting groups that are done, and some other groups that are done, as well as some therapy that is done um, by the folks that we have here. The other side is that there's an early intervention program that we have that's called Who Do You Tell, which we take out to schools. And it's a 1 hour program. We go in and we talk about, who do you tell? if something is going on in your life that, is pretty scary. And so the difference between keep and speak a secret. So the keep secrets are, the fun surprise birthday party that's coming up. The speak secrets are the ones that are causing harm, that are making you feel awful inside.
Yeah.
And sometimes telling their parents may not be the safest person in their life to tell, right?
Sad
And
but
make
true. Yeah.
sad but true, and
Yeah.
we've seen this happen in, athletic programs with gymnastics and things like this. It might be a coach that's doing something or a player on a team that's doing something, whatever that is. Who can they go to if something is disrupting their life in this way? And so that's what the program's about. And come back for a second time, and actually we've had a number of disclosures that have come through this process. What that helps to do is it sets the stage that kids first know that it's good to talk about this, that it's okay to talk about this. So when someone's asked them to keep a secret, that's this awful, that they don't have to keep it, that there's places they can go to. So that's a more of an early intervention type program. The other thing we do is we go out and we do training, and we've done training with churches, we've done training with professionals, with other agencies, with community groups that just want to know more about child abuse, want to know more about how to receive disclosures, and we do that type of training as well. So again, let's not be scared of the language, and let's talk openly about child abuse. Let's talk about sexual abuse and sexual assault, because these are the realities that are happening in our world, and we do need to address them. And so how do we get people comfortable with that language so that we can actually move forward and address these issues and be healthier? And most of us, we all want our kids to grow up to pay their own bills, but to be healthy and to be happy. And so these are ways that we can do that. And so let's move that forward.
Wow, such important work that you all do down there at the Chinook Sexual Assault Center, and such a heavy topic. But thanks so much for being with us today, Kristine.
Thank you so much.
Yes, appreciate having you on. Kristine Cassie is the CEO of the Chinook Sexual Assault Center in Lethbridge.